So I can see most of you have already joined. So we'll be beginning with the webinar. Very good evening, everyone. My name is Mahima, and I'm the part of the engagement marketing team at Vired, and I'll be the host for today. So before we start with the webinar, I will be quickly telling you a little about Vired. So Vired is a premium LearnTech platform, which is the part of the larger Hero group. So Vired is on a mission to not only reimagine the way we learn, but also build a better and a brighter future for themselves. So we are here to equip our learners with the right skill set, knowledge, and the expertise that they need in order to find success. So as you can see today, we are presenting a webinar on the topic strategy in action, how Puma beats Nike and Adidas to become the leading sportswear brand in India. And in order to present this topic with us, we have Varun Gupta. Welcome, Varun.
Hi, Mahima, thanks.
So before we begin with the webinar, I'll quickly introduce Varun with you. So Varun is a management expert with over 15 plus years of experience, and he has executed business transformation programs for clients across diverse domains. His strengths lie in building strong client relationship and collaborating alongside teams to solve complex business issues. He has been instrumental in driving strategy and growth across B2C, B2B, and D2C businesses, ranging from early age startups to well-established US billion-dollar businesses as well. Welcome, Varun.
Thank you, Mahima. Thanks a lot.
So before we move into the webinar, quick housekeeping rules here. As we are in a webinar setting, so you won't be able to switch on your mics and cameras. So you can put down all your questions related to the session in the Q&A session, so that whenever you have any questions, we could take them after the session. So before any further ado, over to you, Varun.
Thank you, Mahima. So what I will do is that I will just, take a minute or so to structure the session and also introduce Ronak, who is with us on the call. So the way we'll run the session, Mahima, and welcome to all our fellow participants. What we want to do today is to run through, break the session into two parts. We will run through the case study for Puma in around 40-45 minutes, and then what we want to do is that as part of Vired, as part of our management domain, we have a program for SMB, which is in collaboration with INSEAD. So Ronak would be, interacting with our participants, and we have an alumni from the program, and we will be, doing some interaction towards the later half of the session. So that is how we'll structure it. So I'll, Mahima, just share my screen and then start. Just give me a second. Yeah, Mahima, do let me know when you can see the screen.
Yeah, I can see your screen, Varun.
Done that. So we'll start. See, what we want to do today is that wanted to, present a case study where we can look at how Puma has implemented their, strategy in India over the last 15 to 17 years. And it is very particularly interesting because there were, many incumbents in the Indian market that Puma entered. But before we do that, I think starting with the objective that how did they beat, Nike and Adidas to become the #1 biggest sportswear brand in India. While we, do this, it's good to understand where is Puma today. So if we look at Puma globally, I don't know how many of you know that Puma is a German origin company, which was actually founded out in, 1948. So it's been nearly, 75 years into existence. It's today the third largest manufacturer of sportswear, globally, and one of the leading sneaker players. The global revenues are nearly 7 billion and market capitalization of nearly 8 billion. It boasts of, more than nearly 15,000 employees on a global perspective. Now, in 2002, post the pandemic, Puma has actually become the first multinational in India to cross 2,000 crores as a revenue. And the interesting part is that this is, while there were players like Adidas and Nike and Skechers. So for example, post the pandemic, when the lockdowns happened, Adidas saw a decline from around 1,300 crores to 900 crores. Somebody like a Nike saw a degrowth of 700 to nearly 500 crores. However, Puma registered a staggering nearly 70% growth over the last year revenues to actually have revenues combined more than these three players, which is staggering in itself, right? So today, I think the objective is to go through, some of the critical aspects of how this got enabled. So before we go into this, I thought it would be good to understand a bit of a history of how Puma was actually founded, and very interesting to note that the company was actually founded out in 1924 by the Dassler brothers, as a shoe factory, as back as 1924. As we roll on, we'll see that the two brothers actually split the company in 1948, and the two parts became one Adidas, which was done by Adolf Dassler, and the second part by Rudolf Dassler, which became as Puma. So actually, if we date it back to nearly 1948 or 1950, both the brands originate from the same family. Now, the way it happened was that in 1936, while the company was growing, a lot of Olympians actually adorned the feet of these Dassler shoes, which led to a spike in sales, and the business boomed. However, the two brothers then fought, separated, and created two different brands: Puma, which was taken up by Rudolf Dassler, and Adidas by Adolf Dassler. Now, we would have also heard of the acronym many a times, where people would have thought about Adidas as an acronym for All Day I Dream About Sports. I don't know how many of you follow that. However, it comes from the first name of Adolf Dassler, who founded the company. So while the original company originated in the 1920s, it actually split up in the around the 1950s to form the two brands. From that point of time, Rudolf, while Adidas, the three leaves which you would have seen, showcases the diversity as a symbol. Rudolf actually wanted to embody the characteristics of a Puma cat. So whether it is speed, strength, endurance, and agility. And hence Puma was born, and over a period of time from 1948 to 2000, current time, where you see the current red logo on the top. This remains the logo for the last, 17 to 18 years. But over a period of time, the logo has evolved, right? So while we have looked at the history, I think from an Indian context, something very interesting happened. So Puma actually debuted in India in 2006, which was actually 13 years after Reebok. So Reebok had been present in India since 1993. So the incumbent was Reebok, while Puma was just entering the Indian market. And it is staggering to see that in 2006, while Puma did a very low revenue of nearly 22 crores in their first year, and there were brands like Nike and Adidas at 100 and 200 crores respectively, while Reebok was the market leader at around 350 crores. But in 2022, as we stand today, revenue for Puma is actually, while we don't have the numbers for Adidas and Nike, the latest ones is for 2022. Reebok number is very close to what they were in 2006. And Adidas and Nike number are actually lower. So if you look at the overall broad picture, today Puma has outrun brands like Adidas, Nike, Zara, Levi's, and many other high ranking brands in the country. So just for a context of how it started, so when they entered in 2006, I think it is very interesting to note that the pole position was held by Reebok as a brand. As we saw, earlier, the largest amount of revenue, nearly 400 crores, was with Reebok, and they started hitting very tones where they were able to capture the right strategies for the market. So they engaged with sports personalities like Yuvraj Singh and MS Dhoni. They came up with a new entire series called Rezig. They started amplifying this entire strategy and started gaining market share from a period of 2006 to 2010, while Puma was just building into the journey. But something very drastic happened, and I understand that some of you might be knowing that there was a big corporate scam in Reebok in 2010, where there was some scam of around nearly 8,200 crores, and that is where Reebok actually lost its position in India. Post that, it could never recover. And today we see that while in 2006 it was at a revenue of around 350 crores, it still today is hovering around the 400 crore mark. What Puma did really well at that point of time was to capitalize on this particular opportunity and jump into the wagon where they wanted to take the position which Reebok was harnessing around 2010. Now, what was that position? Let us talk about that. Very interesting to note again. So at that point of time, there were two separate, I would say, divisions in the market from a customer point of view. One were the sports brand like a Nike or an Adidas, who were actually focusing on sports shoes or performance shoes, basically, where they were, endorsing a lot of sportsmen, focusing on performance, focusing on techniques, etc., which they are, even today. And on the other hand, there were fashion brands which were starting to accelerate, like a Levi's and a Lee Cooper and a Fila and a United Colors of Benetton. However, there was a complete blank space of a confluence between the sports and fashion, which was a position to be taken once Reebok started to wind down after the scam in 2010. So Puma very early realized that in India what used to happen and what the scenario is right now also. However, there has been a lot of traction over the last 10 to 15 years. Sports as a category has taken off and it has started amplifying. But at the same time, even today, while we are buying sports shoes, and there might be aberrations, when I talk about we, I'm referring to maybe 80% of all the consumers, the ability and the propensity to spend on a sports shoe is still much lower, because we tend to use a pair of shoe for multiple usages, while it is running, while it is playing badminton, while it is going out for a walk. However, if you compare the some of the North American or the European markets, it is very, very nuanced. So people have different shoes for different sports categories. Puma realized this very early, that in the Indian customer was very, very different. So while in a US or a Europe, people would use different shoes for different kind of sports activities. In India, because the customer centricity was still around the value for the brand, and the value of money was one of the critical aspects in the mind of the customer, they would rather prefer having spend 4 or 5 sneakers or shoes which they could have worn when they go out. So this was the kind of opportunity where they pivoted as per the market and created this category, which was about more about lifestyle footwear and much more than athletic footwear in terms of the market demand and in terms of the market opportunity. So while a Nike and an Adidas were positioning themselves as a performance sportswear company, Puma took a very, very different dimension towards the market and positioned itself as a style and leisure sportswear company, which I think was the first step where the addressable market itself, where they were operating, became very huge. A second very, very different aspect about the Indian market at that point of time was also a lack of focus on women's sportswear. So while Nike and Adidas were making sportswear for different women athletes, you can still notice that the area size in a particular showroom where women's sportswear items are kept are still smaller in terms of size compared to for men related products. However, this has drastically changed over a period of time. So they wanted to focus on women's sportswear, which again was a relatively easier place to target. And from a customer point of view, while there was an addressable opportunity between a confluence of a lifestyle and sports, while there was an opportunity for women's sportswear, they very clearly identified that they wanted to target people between the age group of say a 20 to a 35, and zeroed in on two particular categories: one, millennials, and second, the generation Z, which is the zoomers. And for some of the to contextualize this for some of the listeners, typically how we define a millennial is that people who are born between 1995 to 2010 are termed as zoomers, and people who are born before that, between a period of say a 1980 to a 95, are termed as millennials. So Puma was very clear in three things: targeting lifestyle products, confluence of sports, targeting millennial and generation Z, and keeping their focus on women. So while they did this, I think over a period of time, while there were companies like Nike, who actually was sponsoring the Indian cricket team between 2006 and 2010, which, at that point of time led to doubling of their revenue on a small base between a 90 to a 180 crore. At the same time, Adidas had aligned itself to somebody like a Sachin Tendulkar. So for a mix of influence and celebs to represent the brand, Puma took a very, very alternate route. So as they moved into the journey, what they wanted to do is bring in a mix of cricketers because, all said and done, cricket was and has been and even, currently dominated the, mind space when it came to a lot of customers. But it also started opting for a lot of women celebs. And post that, if you see today, it's a confluence of a range of influencers. So whether it's like a Virat Kohli, which was a very big bet for them, where they have a complete different product range called a 1.8, which today is contributing nearly 200 crores for Puma as a brand endorser itself. So the product range is different, and it is contributing to nearly 1/10 or 10% of their revenue from a India overall revenue perspective. But they made sure over a period of time that the mix of people who were coming into the picture was very, very different, right? So you see a Chidrangana Sin and a Lisa Hayden and a Mary Kom and a KL Rahul and a Sara Ali Khan. So this was something which they did. Also, what they did very proactively was to focus on non-sports properties like a Sonic or a Hedgehog, one of the key video game legends. Combined this and started focusing on a lot of digital amplification. So if we take a step back in terms of positioning in the market, a very different from a Nike and an Adidas. In order to do, represent the brand, they took a very, very different approach compared to some of the existing brands in the market. Now, I think it is, while we talk about, how they moved after having these, influencers in place, there are some key pointers on the slide, but I will, talk about them in detail. First of all, Puma was one of the companies to move very, very quickly towards digital marketing. So today, if you consider their spends, which is around 20 to 25% of their revenue, so doing around 2,000 crores in India, would be spending anywhere between 500 crores on their marketing campaigns. All of this, nearly 100% is skewed on digital. What they did very effectively was that they moved away from traditional media, and as COVID hit, while other brands were scrambling to make space and adjust to the COVID waves, to move towards digital, I think Puma as a brand was strongly positioned to tap into that because this entire journey started, relatively earlier. Apart from that, while the spends are focused, I think another thing what they do very, very well is that in terms of investing in the right platforms, which would enable a lot of marketing automation and drive hyper personalization. What that means is that as a consumer, if I go to a Puma.com, if I go to a Puma app, if I go to Puma store, the amount of data which would be collected through a lot of your mobile number, your cameras in the store, the time at which you have arrived, etc., the kind of 360-degree experience which they are able to cut through and give across channels is something which is very, very unique. What they are able to do this is that, first of all, they did a Salesforce partnership for a 360 customer view and a lot of different tie-ups from a tech perspective. So they made sure that tech was a very, very strong priority, and started moving in terms of developing this entire MarTech, where they leverage artificial intelligence and things like tie-ups with a Selligent marketing cloud, where as part of this session we would not go into details but keep it at a high level, but later at some point of time we would also discuss in detail how these things actually work at some of the granular details, right? So the objective there was very simple. Collect maximum data of customers coming into a Puma store, onto the Puma website, onto different channels, create a 360-degree view of the customer, and send personalized offers to them so that the chances of conversions are increased. And how it is done is that, say, for example, if two people, including me and you, are going to a Puma website, the kind of offer which I would see might be very, very different based on at what time I log in, the frequency of login, what has been my customer journey, do I exit the website at the checkout stage, or how, what is the heat map in terms of how I'm navigating the website. So while they were doing this, so there are three parts to this entire digital first initiative where they pivoted around tech. One was around moving to digital ad spends, whether it is spending that money. Second, enabling a lot of technical tech partnerships with the relevant players to create hyper personalization and data driven automation. And third, also started amplifying a lot of these things on social media. So if you today look at something like an Instagram or Twitter, Instagram having 12 million followers or Twitter having 2 million followers, and these are India handles what we are talking about and not global. What they also did very well was to create independent pages and create independent handles like a Puma Women, a Puma Motorsport, a Puma Football, and create various channels through which customer acquisition and retention was being done. Just as a trivia, you would know that Skoda Ferrari as a F1 team is sponsored by Puma as part of the F1 circuit. So this was the entire marketing initiative which was led by Puma, right? Another very, very important aspect, and I think the most important aspect of how they moved into the market was the entire route to market or the channel strategy, what they did, right? And it is a good time to take this example and understand how brands would take different strategies when they are as part of their route to market strategy. So while Puma entered the Indian market, I think they first went with the traditional retail route, where they tied up with the brand was not that strong, they were weak. What they wanted to do is that tie up with a lot of multi-brand outlets. And when I say multi-brand outlet, it's typically an outlet where you would go in, something like a shopper stop, where you would find a lot of brands in one place, and started keeping their footwear. However, the struggle was real. What they were failing at were two things. One, they were not getting the customer data. Secondly, they were not getting the shelf space and the right amount of focus within that particular multi-brand outlet. So what they did was that they started moving to an EBO and a franchisee model. And I will contextualize EBO for you. EBO is basically an exclusive brand outlet. So it is a large Puma store, which might or might not be operated by the company itself. So more than 50 plus EBO outlets, and then a franchisee model where they would run the entire construct of the store and let the franchisee take a partnership with them. Now, as they moved as part of their retail strategy, I think what they realized was that they wanted to move the experience in these large format stores. So today, if you go to a Puma store, you'll find very different features compared to some of the other stores, and you can go and try it. Or in some of the flagship stores, there's a lot of degree of customization which they offer, which as a initiative is called a Puma into You. And what they will do is that if you buy some apparel or you buy some shoes, you have the ability to customize that particular product with 100 different designs which you can do. Similarly, to make the experience much more engaging with the customers, they started deploying some F1 simulators in some of their showrooms. So the idea was very clear. They first entered into MBOs, which are your multi-branded outlets. They soon realized that they were not getting the shelf space. They wanted to transition into exclusive outlets. Even in their stores, the format were large stores with features which would engage and retain the customers. This was one of the key strategies what they executed. Today in India, Puma has around more than 400 stores across cities. Something which is very, very interesting to note is that while Puma opened these stores, they had the options to target, say, something like metro or a tier 1 town. But what they did very effectively was a concept of one city and one store, which was again very, very different from some of the other players like a Nike and an Adidas. So what they did was that while they penetrated the tier 1 town, so while the 7 or 8 metros were there, for the list of the other towns, say something like a Chandigarh or Lucknow, they started seeding these particular cities with large format stores, big formats, but limited number of stores in one particular city. While they did this and they were moving in the retail chain, they very soon realized that the opportunity was huge when it came to tier 2 and tier 3 towns. Now, as we take a step back, you would have noticed that as we start moving away from the cities towards the outer part of the cities, you will see a lot of factory outlets. That is a strategy which is deployed by companies to basically position the products at a lower price. It is not that so many pieces are defective, and you will have ample examples of brands having these large factory outlets because they cannot lower the price in the main store, and also the propensity of the consumer to buy the product is lower. What they do is that they take the construct of a factory store outlet and open it in outer part of the city or tier 2 or tier 3, and there are ample examples of brand doing that. Puma started to do that. I think they had a very peculiar problem because the brand was not known there, so the acceptability from the consumers was low. And again, they were very innovative in amplifying this particular strategy. They actually innovated the concept of co-branded stores in tier 2 and tier 3. So say in a city like a Coimbatore or Bhuj or a Multai, what they did was that they tied up with fashion brands where their offering was complementary. So something like a Levi's, a Pepe Jeans, a United Colors of Benetton. Their economies of scale worked out. It was economically, much more affordable for them because they shared the same space. There was no competing clause because the offering was very complementary between the brands, and the footfall coming into the store was combined for both the brands. So they did this very, very effectively. I think today they have between an 80 to 100 co-branded stores in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. However, if you look at their plans, they plan to open another 50 of them in the coming year. So while you look at the retail strategy for Puma, there are 3 or 4 very interesting anchors. They started with a MBO, which is a multi-branded outlet. They soon realized that they were not getting the shelf space and they had to move to an EBO or a company-owned outlet. What they did very effectively at that point of time was to move to large format stores, started enhancing the customer experience there through various initiatives. As they saw the opportunity to move into tier 2 and tier 3, they started experimenting with co-branded stores, and today they are running it very successfully. While you look at Puma sales, so a very, very interesting fact is that today for online platform, nearly 50% of the revenue for Puma is coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, right? So an omni-channel strategy, when we talk about, is the basket of the channels which the company would use to actually reach the market. So while we have talked about the traditional retail channel and how Puma pierced it through over a period of time, I think it is equally important to talk about the digital channel. Now, within the digital channel, there were 2 options for Puma, or for any company. There are 2 options. There are platforms like Flipkart, Myntra, and an Amazon, where the way it functions is that the customer footfall is very, very high. So we all would go to these websites to shop for products. However, the brands need to part ways with a significant percentage of their revenue, which they pay as commission to these platforms. So in an ideal state, a brand would want to market products through their own brand.com, which in this case is puma.com, right? However, given that a lot of customers are on these platforms, the brand is forced to have a presence on these particular platforms. So today, for Puma, if you look at the revenue split, nearly 50% of their revenue, or nearly 45% of their revenue, is coming from digital channels. Within the digital channels, 8 to 10%, which is a very, very, if you look at the industry benchmarks, where across sectors like retail, across, consumer goods, the contribution would be somewhere around 3 to 4%. Puma is at an industry high of 8 to 10% at a puma.com. And for platforms like, the e-commerce players like Flipkart, Myntra, and Amazon, this is around 35%. So when you say that, what is the gross value in terms of the sales, the target which they have taken is nearly 500 crores to be sold through this platform. And while we talk about it, it is very important to note that, when we shop at these platforms, companies are not able to access the customer data. That is one biggest bottleneck which every brand has to deal with. So, for example, if I'm shopping at an Amazon, my customer data in terms of my number, my spend, the time at which I come to the website, the pages I browse, what kind of categories I'm interested in, because that is the key strength of the e-commerce platform, is not shared by a brand. So every brand would want that they could build their own brand.com, where they would control the customer data, where they would enrich the experience of the customer, where they would collect a lot of data points, and they can personalize the experience. However, the biggest bottleneck is that when you create your own website, the the ability to get footfall to your particular website becomes very, very low. And over a period of time, you have to invest a lot in terms of putting the right SEO in place, getting the right amount of traffic. So it's a catch 22 situation where if you're not present at the e-commerce platform, you will lose out on a great amount of footfall. And if you don't have a brand.com, it is something the brand experience cannot be controlled. And they were also dealing with problems like the kind of imagery, product descriptions, the placement, etc., still continued to be a concern. When you look at this entire channel strategy and compare it with something like a Nike or an Adidas, one clear advantage which Puma could able to bring to the table is that while post-pandemic, a lot of the digital revenue increased for all the three players. However, as a base, while going into these particular years, say a period from 2020 to 2022, where the actual gap has got amplified is because they went into this journey pretty early. So entire building blocks of having the right martech, ad tech, doing the right tech tie-ups, enabling their own brand.com, doing the partnerships from an e-commerce perspective was very, very strong. So I think these are some of the aspects which I wanted to touch today. So what we just to recap, we have talked about 4 or 5 key things. One, and I'll stop sharing my screen, and maybe we can go to some interaction with people who are there. So what we wanted to say is that Puma as a brand was able to grow disproportionately. If we look at the sales strategy for Puma, I can bucket it into 3 parts. One, identifying the right addressable market. Based on that addressable market, what is the different positioning they took in the market? And those were very clear. They wanted to play in the confluence of two aspects, the sportswear industry and the lifestyle industry, which became a great competitive advantage for them. Secondly, in terms of focusing in women as a category, when they moved into this, while they wanted to take this market position, what are the kind of campaigns they wanted to run? What are the kind of influences they wanted to engage? What is the kind of content marketing strategy they wanted to do? And moved to digital very, very quickly. While we talk about this, one clear differentiator for them was their retail strategy. And in some of the next sessions, we will also talk about how a lot of the D2C brands are now realizing that, especially from a retail perspective in India, it is very important to have both an online and an offline presence. So you would see companies like Lenskart, you would see companies like Boat now having physical stores. While these started as e-commerce platforms, you would see more and more stores of these companies in physical spaces, because the Indian consumer is highly complex. The touch and feel factor, it is very difficult to change consumer behavior from that aspect. So Mahima, that's it from my side. I think we can take 5 minutes to look at some of the questions, and then we can switch over to Ronak to take the interaction with our current alumni and talk about the program.
Sure, Varun. Varun, we do have some questions as well in the Q&A section, if you could see.
Sure, let me have a look. So there's one question about digital strategy and competitors. Are there any others in the chat window? Yeah, so how did they arrive first at the digital strategy? How do you identify the right addressable market? Somebody is talking about the presentation which I had attended last session.
We have a question from Shruti Bajaj where she is asking how Puma arrive at the digital first strategy.
So Shruti, see, it is very simple. It's not about, when you would decide to have a digital first strategy. It's about when you have to, target a particular market. How do you reach your customer? I think that's the larger question in place. And if you look at India as a market today, there are some 3 or 4 very strong factors which are pushing brands to take a digital first strategy. If you talk about the number of smartphones, more than 60 crore in terms of the actual number of devices, the internet penetration in India, the digital savvy customers, the access to social platforms. So for a brand today, I would not say that it's a choice, it's a compulsion. It's more about which brand would move more swiftly and utilize that particular channel to get the sales. However, I would also say what we were discussing earlier, that while you have a digital first strategy in India, specifically in key sectors, retail traditional channels also has a very, very strong bearing. So you would have format stores like a Shopper Stop, like a Chroma, like a Reliance Digital, where people would still go and they want to experience these products. They want to touch and feel these products, while people might browse on digital platforms to go through the menu. However, there would still be customers who would actually want to go to physical stores and do the actual purchase and complete the journey. So that becomes very important.
I hope that answers your question, Shruti.
I think, Mahima, there are
Yes.
what we can do is also that I think a couple of people are also asking about the last session and the presentation. What you can do is that please share the LinkedIn profile for the company and for myself, and we will make sure that we are sharing the presentation for those particular sessions and today there, so people can connect, and I'll be happy to connect on LinkedIn and answer specific queries, because time is a bit of a constraint today, but we can definitely connect and discuss it in detail. But I think we have a couple of minutes for 1 or 2 more questions, Mahima, if there are any.
Yes, Varun, you can refer to the Q&A section.
Sure, let me have a look. Okay, so one question is about celebrity endorsement, Puma pricing compared to other brands. It was pretty, they are Nike and Adidas combined because of tier 2. Okay, so let me so there are 2 or 3 questions in the chat window. I think one is around the celebrity endorsement and what led them to choose those kind of celebrities. See, choosing a celebrity and getting the endorsement is a direct function of what kind of customers you want to target. So as we saw in this particular case study, that for them, the identification of a particular customer segment, which was millennials and Zoomers, was the key criteria. And who else than Virat Kohli as a youth icon today? Because when brands do that, they look at what is your social following, how are you being tracked on social media, how are you being followed across digital platforms. But at the same time, it's a great mix of, so for example, if they wanted to target women as a category, they made sure that they are choosing somebody like a Mary Kom to come into the mix. They made sure that while they are doing an amalgamation of sports and lifestyle, that somebody like a Chitrangana Singh, who is associated more by fashion, is also there while we create, while they created this kind of positioning. So largely it was driven by that. I think another question is around the pricing. So see, Puma over a period of time, if you would know, and if if you are a sneakerhead, has come up with various series like the RS and the RX into the market, where they have evolved the earlier products into new offerings. What it tells us is that today, say for example, running, and it is very peculiar to note that somebody like a Nike who would make a running shoe for a 15,000 rupee would have performance characteristic where a lot of things would go into the research and development over a period of time, and hence a combination of the brand pull plus the kind of time and effort which would have gone into developing that shoe. So the price which you are paying is for two things. One is the functionality of the product, and second, the brand and how strongly it is positioned in a particular market. For Puma, it was a very, very strategic choice, because what they did was that they got the product while companies were focusing on brand endorsement like a Sachin Tendulkar or an Indian cricket team. At that point of time, their only focus was to develop the product offering, and they developed these products somewhere in the mid ranges. So an RS or an RX series for Puma today would cost anywhere between a 5 or a 8 or a 9,000, and at a discounted price on digital platforms would be available for a 6 or a 7K. Whereas a similar shoe from a running perspective, where it gets specific to a golf or a running or a tennis, for a Nike would still be 12 or 13,000. So that's a very differentiated pricing strategy what Puma was able to execute over a period of time. Right. I think one last question, Mahima. I'm getting a lot of questions actually. Yeah, then what would be the Puma next strategy? Recorded videos, foresight to try before COVID. So, okay, so I'll take a couple of more minutes because there are 2 or 3 questions on, how Puma was able to foresee and make this shift to digital. I think companies who would have a medium to long-term perspective of how there are certain business changes or macro environment changes which are beyond your control, say something like a COVID, which nobody knew was coming and people were taken by shock and surprise. However, at the same time, there are companies who would not look at a 1 or a 2-year scenario, but how the market will evolve over the next 3 to 5 years. In India specifically, they were clear about the digital shift which was happening from a consumer perspective, and therefore the strategy of how we can address it over a period of the next 3 to 5 years. Of course, when COVID came, and as everybody know that the kind of shift to digital and e-commerce which was expected over 5 to 6 years happened in 5 to 6 months. However, those kind of exponential growth rates are now back to the same graph and growth rate. So yeah, it's about what position the company takes and how proactive they are in terms of looking at while there is a action for the near future. I think if somebody would ask you that what is the difference between an action and a strategy, action is always short term, but a strategy is a medium to long term, and therefore the vision and the differentiation and the results is in front of us, where they have combinedly in front of somebody like a Nike or an Adidas, which is mind-boggling from a India market scenario. So with that, Mahima, I'll just take a pause because I know there's Ronak also waiting, and it would be very interesting for our learners to actually go through that. While we talk about one case today, how do we bring this to life as part of our curriculum and program, whereas something like an INSEAD SMB program is concerned. So over to you, Ronak. Mahima, just share the links, and just to assure the learners, thank you so much for joining in and taking out the time. We will share these case studies over a period of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the session, Varun. Over to you, Ronak.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I believe that while we had this wonderful insights from Varun coming from our team, talking about the strategy of Puma with respect to the major competitors in the market like Nike, Adidas, and Reebok, I think that it was a wonderful insight on a Saturday evening right after dusk, understanding such context. I believe that a lot of us who have joined the session today are coming in from, plethora of background, multiple fraternities. But before I go ahead with my agenda, and I would definitely, like to make it a bit of a crisp and to the point conversation which we would have today. I would also like to, invite Mr. Atul Kumar, who has joined us. I think, Mahima, you can give an introduction of Atul also simultaneously.
Sure, Ronak. So we have Atul Kumar with us here today. So he is our learner and he has successfully completed our strategic management and business essential program with Wired. He's here in order to share his experience today, and he's coming with a 10 plus years of experience, and he has worked in companies like IBM, Wipro, Reliance, and Birla Power Solutions. Also, he is having an extensive consulting, business analysis, and product management experience in multiple CRM implementations and etc. Welcome, Atul.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Atul, we can hear you.
Okay, I have a very low bandwidth, so I'll be working on audio. I guess that's okay with you.
Okay, no worries, Atul. We will be, adding you for answering the doubts of people in the, domain, right? So before we go ahead with the same, Atul, we will be giving you certain questions to answer. So while you can mute yourself for the time being, I'll be taking it with some of the points. Okay, thank you very much. So the points which I wanted to talk about team over here today, before I go into the same, I would be really more than happy to understand the domain from which we are all coming in from. It could be either IT, it could be either, automotive, it could be pharmaceutical sector, it could be emerging sectors like an EV or renewable energy or a BFSI sector. So if you can put it in the chat box, maybe for me, it would be great to answer and I'll tell you the reason behind it while I take it with this conversation.
It would be better if you put down your domains into the Q&A section.
Yeah. We have started receiving the same.
Right.
I think others also can put it. This is all confidential. All right. So we are seeing IT, we are seeing automobile, we are seeing retail, real estate, pharmaceutical, museum design industry, IT as well, again, general insurance, fisheries, BFSI, building materials, consulting. Okay. So I think that, we have people are putting in a lot of entries. Okay, fine. So the commonality which, we want to talk about, that while all of us are hailing from different backgrounds, but attending this webinar today, the reason behind it, there should be a commonality between the same. And the commonality, what could be that? Do you have an answer to it? And I would be again giving an option to put it in the chat box once again. Despite, all of us belonging from different fraternities, some of them being common, business, right? Business. Okay. Growth. All right. Okay. Key points in business, customer, product, and business. General management and strategy. Okay. We have been receiving the invites. So yeah, the point which I want to talk about right now, and I'll start with one of a couple of slides. But before I go into the same, let me answer this for you. Yeah, wanted to know about the Puma strategy, IT management services, change in environment strategy. All right, a lot of points which are again getting into the common direction. See, while we see that you are from an IT or a pharmaceutical background or real estate or retail sector or from an emerging background also, BFSI sector also, a lot of them. The point is that the key of all of that is business. And business, when we talk about the same, there are areas where we talk about like management. Management could be even further broken into like a general management or strategic management. So what I'll do right now, I'll start with sharing my screen and I'll talk about a few points first. Is my screen visible?
Yes, Donna, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. So management, unlike a term like data science, which we have been hearing, since last last decade, more of
Rana,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. Can you make it a full screen view if that's possible?
Sure, I'll do that. Is this better now? Better now?
Slightly better.
Yeah. Now?
No. Let's go to the previous setting.
Previous setting. This one is better.
Yes, this is better.
All right. Thank you. So while we talk about the same, when we talk about business, and when we talk about business, there always comes a word which is known as management. Now, management, if we talk about in the earlier period, like we talk about the 1950s, management was not that advanced, which we talk about today. We didn't know about business simulations at that point in time. We didn't know about digital strategies because digitalization itself was not a part of it in the 1950s. So how we see management getting evolved over that period of time, the 1950s, people used to talk about financial control, budgeting, planning, etc. But when we moved ahead in the 1960s to the early part of the 70s, it was all about planning. It was about forecasting. While India also saw, when the constitution was enabled in the year 1950, we saw that there was planning commissions which were being set up during that point in time when we are talking about that range. And when we talk about a slightly more ahead, going a decade more, it is mid 70s to mid 80s. It was all about positioning. A lot of us who have done MBAs, we have also been taught about segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So here the positioning of the market comes into the place. Now, when we talk about the late 80s to the 1990s, it's all about competition because earlier, when India was under a part of the British colony until 1947, and then when we got independent and the partition happened, then we started to venture into the business. But over a period of time, when India gained its economical structure, at that point in time, we talk about between 80s to 90s when industry started to thrive. And again, in that point in time, competition started to come into the picture. And therefore, you started focusing upon the areas of competitive advantages, how they can plan it in the right manner, whether it's with respect to people, whether it's respect to geography, or whether it's respect to the resources which they can deploy. Now, when we talk about 2000s, right, after the 2000, we see that there is an innovation which has come into place. Now, what's more important today to understand that today, and when we talk about a very common term like renovation, innovations, all of us know that during a festival like a Diwali in our country, we have this habit of getting our home cleaned, renovated, or maybe doing some kind of innovation. Like people talk about getting in new furnitures, or maybe even moving to a new place, buying a new car, etc. It's all about the upgrading this to from one form of lifestyle to the other form of lifestyle, or getting the dilapidated things into the right form. Why is that a structure? Because we know that it's important to renovate and innovate the things time to time. Otherwise, it's a stagnant graph for us. Similarly, on the similar picture, when we talk about our career today, while we all are hailing in from different backgrounds, right? But one point which is common is that ultimately what we do, whether we work as an engineer, whether we work, let's say, into the HR role, whether we work into an analytics role, or whether we are into operations, or whether we are a founder of a company, our whole and soul motto boils down to one point: is about the growth of the business, right? And the sheer reality, the sheer veracity which I'm talking about right now, the testimony of the fact is that of all of us who are sticking throughout this conversation which Varun had with us for last 45 minutes, which talked about Puma strategy, all about business. There were various measures which we saw, what changes did they did the company make, how did they identify penetrating into the Indian subcontinent market. That's a part of it. But while we talk about that, the ultimate motto is all about how do you grow your business, right? And while we talk about the same, it's about how do we innovate the areas of management. And management over here could be, now in today's world, moreover, people talk about strategic management. And as Varun rightly mentioned, that there's a difference between strategic management or maybe a general management. It's because that is taken for a short-term plan, and strategic management is about all those long-term initiatives. A very good example which I can bring in right now, it's about while our country, and not just our country, the whole world, while we talk about the COVID situation, and that was a situation which baffled a lot of us because none of us were anticipating for a situation like that. But then some of the brands made wonders during that point in time, and some of the brands failed like anything. Again, another fantastic example, a classic example would be Nokia. Where did Nokia fail? All of us are well aware about the fact that Nokia didn't want to innovate into their way they wanted to offer the product offerings. So they wanted to stick with the conventional ways which they were going ahead with, and which is again one of the reasons why Nokia failed, which is pretty clear to us. While they tried to do a partnership with Microsoft, bringing in models like Lumia, but eventually that failed. So one thing which is a common takeaway from any session, which all of us can take it, and that's not just from Puma, that's not from the examples which I'm putting in right now, and that's not, restricted to the kind of webinars which we will attend over a period of time, right? One key takeaway all over is about constant renovations, constant innovations, understanding, gauging the competition. That is very important. And when we talk about us, where you can put the biggest investment, we can put the biggest investment in ourselves. Why? Because if we are constantly upgrading ourselves, upgrading our skills, it is where we are going ahead in the right direction. So while we see that, yeah, a lot of us are hailing in from different backgrounds, and see what I can talk about at length, because I don't want to take much of the time on these areas. What I'll talk about is strategic management as a key thing, where we talk about 5 Ps. And what are these 5 Ps? These are people, process, platform, partnership, and problem solving approach. So why? Because people for any organization, right? It's the key strength. It's the most important pillar. Then comes the process, where we talk about the steps. In Japan, there's a term known as Kaizen. When we talk about the continual improvement, Toyota is a great example of the same, where they talk about continual improvement. And when we talk about platform, it's important in today's world to understand the platform, whether it's an online tool, whether it's offline tool. How do you manage the same? Because today we see that with the automation coming into the picture, a lot of people rely upon platform, which is obviously the platform which you innovate, which you bring it into the picture with the help of the people itself. But then, you don't invest more on the people, you invest more on the platform at that point in time, so that you save on the workforce. Then comes the partnership. We hear a lot about mergers, acquisitions. We hear a lot about, even when we talk about, the session today, we heard about, the one which we talk about Virat Kohli, the partnership which he, is having with Puma. So partnerships also plays a pivotal role when we talk about growing stakeholders. And then comes the problem solving approach. There's a difference, a lot of you might have heard about Pareto analysis, might have heard about the fishbone analysis, a why analysis in the business problem solving cases. But the best of the example, it's a corrective and a preventive action. There's a difference between the two. When we talk about a problem solving approach, you always have to think about a why analysis, and then you have to think about a preventive action so that the problem do not occur again. Again, taking back to the same example which I had, and again defining a different derivative from the same, is that when we talk about COVID, we all are examples of strategic management at our household. In a situation like that, when people, had a lot of chaos all around, the people panicked because there was somebody who was, bedridden, somebody, who was severely ill, people having chronic diseases, they were even going through tough situations. But then when you had a proper plan into place, you were able to enable the same. Otherwise, it would be just a reaction of the situation you were put into. And that's how strategic management also comes into the play. It's not a part which will just help you in your business or in your work. It is something which will help you to transform the way you think about the lifestyle. Okay. Now, giving some examples of unicorns, like, being very honest, I think, hands on your heart, you know that very well, that like, if I just talk about a decade back in India as a country, we didn't used to talk about terms like unicorns and decacorns. But yes, the world has evolved, the economics have evolved over a period of time, and the way we look at the game of valuation and unit economics, that has also evolved. And that is where India is a booming market for the same, where we have seen a lot of unicorns, going at, getting out in the country. What I'll talk about right now, it's a very interesting factor about, a lot of us, if you are, fond of caffeine, you want to have coffee, about Starbucks. But Starbucks, the way it, penetrated into the market, it was also really an interesting case study. So not talking about the detailed case study, what I'm going to talk about is the interesting way how Starbucks had integrated vertically the supply chain. Because if you have a clear idea about the same, I think if you would have visited Starbucks, and Starbucks, the speed at which it has amplified its presence into the country with not just the outlets, but also the credibility which they bring onto the plate of anybody who's going to the Starbucks outlet. That's how, because they are well connected with the coffee suppliers, right? From where the coffee is coming in, they are well aware about the fact, and that's how which we call it as a vertically integrated supply chain. Another classic example, which I would want to give it over here, is from a well-known company known as Gillette, right? Gillette is a company, I think, we all know about the razors, right? Which the male in the country, in our country, they are using today as Gillette as a very, very good brand. But how many of us are aware about the fact that when Gillette launched that product known as Gillette Vector, it was a product where they had tested it on Indian students in Massachusetts, right? When they tested the same and they launched the product full-fledgedly into the Indian market. And eventually what happened that when they launched the product in the market, they brought it via suppliers, they had it into the stores, not just into the tier 1 cities, but also tier 2 and tier 3. But the problem was even after doing the test, they found that the product failed miserably. The reason being that at that point in time, this what I'm talking about is not about today, it's more than a decade back. And when they launched that, the reason was that when they did that test on even on the Indian students there back there in Massachusetts, the reason was because in India, people had scarcity of water at some of the places. The TDS level of water was different from what it was there in the different geography. And India also had a problem of running water, because running water is something, a lot of people used to have those mugs in which they used to have those shaving. And India is also not a country where people used to shave regularly each and every day. As a part of the practice, a lot of people wanted to save on the money and on the cost, etc. And that is where they didn't take these factors into consideration. An interesting insight which we can draw from this story is reverse innovation. So when they failed, instead of just repenting on that and considering that how they can make up the losses, they thought about something that, okay, let us take this product completely out of the market and let us make this reverse innovation. And when they put this reverse innovation into picture, they launched Gillette Vector, because this time they did the test on the people that in the same country. And that is where I take my, I takes me back to what I told a few minutes back is about the pillars of strategic management. We talk about people. So people was right, but again, the process, the place, the platform was not right when they wanted to launch that product. This reverse innovation is a part of strategic management, which we have to learn over a period of time. A lot of people have this question then that what is difference between a strategic management or a general management? Are these very fancy terms? The answer is no. Because in general management, what you learn about is the basic areas of an organizational behavior. You understand about the organizational chart, you understand about what are the cross-functional teams, how do you operate and sync among each other. But when you talk about the strategic management, basically, it is an example to give you, it's like design thinking. Now, design thinking, as a term, if you can also put your, answers in the chat box, if you are aware about design thinking, or if you have used somewhere in your business or at your work, I'll be more than happy to read while I'll be taking those questions. So design thinking, if you are well aware about, it is like creating a product from scratch to the finished stage. If we have product managers here in the forum, they'll also be able to correlate really very well about the same. So another example is a blue ocean strategy. We are also heard about red ocean and blue ocean, but do you know that where was this blue ocean strategy coined for the very first time? If you would Google it, you will get the answers, and I'll come to that point also. So if I talk about the blue ocean strategy, it is like, operating and, launching a product in a place where there is no competition. It's like a complete renovation. It's like, innovation. It's like a complete way where you would build in a product where nobody has even thought about. And that's where, we see these startups coming into the picture. While I discussed about unicorns and decacorns emerging in our country, we see the another reason is that either you could make a replica of what others are doing at a better cost or at a better platform, but the other part could be to launch something which is not even thought about, right? So this is another part in the area of strategic management. And branding is also a key example. The way you perceive a brand, it's very, very important, because how do people on the other end perceive your brand? That creates an image. For example, we all know about the story of Maggie. We all have had Maggie, I think, at least once in our lifetime. So Maggie, we had heard this that, okay, there, lead was found in Maggie and it was unfit for, consumption, etc. But then look at the way today, nobody has stopped eating it, at least for the people who were eating it at that point in time in the past. There was a lot of skepticism in the mind of people. A lot of criticism also started coming up. But the way the brand did, so the brand, what they did, they pulled out all the products, which were there, which was supplied, in different stores. And when they pulled it out, they made out their claims. I think that you can also put your answers in the chat box with respect to the examples I'm giving time to time with respect to all of these things. So branding also plays a very, very critical role. Another part is entrepreneurial thinking. how many of us could have even imagined about launching our own startups or own business? Maybe if we were, doing it, let's say in early 2000s or maybe in 2010 too, because funding at that point in time was a difficult situation. Because, people used to bank upon, investors which were not available so readily, or maybe, funding was a big challenge. And even not about the funding, the way people are connecting today, that was not a scenario a good point of time back. So entrepreneurial thinking is something which has, which is a key insight, because people have started thinking as an entrepreneur. It is irrespective of whether you are owning a company or a family business or planning to launch your own startup. Entrepreneurial thinking is a very key element of it, which you can put into place irrespective of wherever you are at. Even if you are an employee at an organization, your entrepreneurial thinking can really help you to take the business of the organization at a next level. And that key insights, which means the key takeaways which you can do from that role, will definitely help you over a long period of time. The other part is business simulation. Some of the people can, get confused between business simulation and the other areas like, case studies. No, business simulation and case studies are different thing. And, while I'm talking about any point of topic over here, it will be really great if you would put your points in the chat box if you have any questions. So again, I'm repeating it time and again that if you have any question, please put it in the chat box. So business simulation, for that matter of fact, there's an example like a Singapore exchange simulation, or any other simulation when we talk about. So it's like a complete interactive learning experience when we talk about, and which allows you to be into that complete setup scenario. So it's really an immersive experience where you take the case study from a lens which you would have intended to do if you would have been present at the same situation. Okay, I'll give a detailed example a bit more later. Influencing without authority. A lot of us are aware about this term, but we may or may not use this term. Okay, influencing without authority is, how is that important? It's mentioned influencing with authority over here. That is something which all of us are aware about. For example, let's say you lead, you lead a team of 20 people today. So you have a direct authority on those 20 people. But then you have to get work done, let's say from one of the, companies with which you have outsourced a product. You wanted to get it done from a, company you want to have outsourced with. So in that case, what happens that you do not have a complete end-to-end control on them. But how do you get your work done with them? That's a challenge. So in that case, how do you understand that credibility, respect, collaboration, all of these terms that comes into picture? Again, finance or managerial decisions. A lot of us today, when we talk about business, irrespective of whatever domain we were coming in from, finance is an important term to understand at one point in time when you grow in the ladder of organization. And even when I say this, it is also equally important for aspiring entrepreneurs to understand finance, because there are a lot of jargons which people don't understand. What is XIRR or what is CAGR or what is ARR? And there may be, cash as of ratios, how you can, read a balance sheet, all of those factors. It's very important. But then finance is a term which people think that, okay, if I would have to understand finance, maybe if I would have to become a CA or I would have to learn about the basics of commerce, the answer is no. So whatever is required for you to know and understand, that is something which you would be learning in finance for managerial decisions. The other part which I talk about is operations and supply chain. As I think we were having certain examples and illustrations to depict that how operations and supply chain play a very fundamental key part in any business. This is where we talk about the corporate strategy over here. Okay. And then foundations of strategy, personal leadership and leading teams and organization. Leading teams and organizations, it's a different ballgame altogether. Because when we talk about leading teams and organizations, the fundamental factor to understand over here is that there are ways you run one team, and when you are running multiple teams which are cross-functional, how do you make a sense with them? Because let's say, for example, a lot of you mentioned that I am coming in from a BFSI sector, or I am coming in from an IT sector. Even in your company at a position which you are at right now today, it may so happen that, one part of your team talks about sales, the other part of the team talks about operations, the third part of the team talks about, let's say, HR, the other part of the team talk about employee engagement, a lot of those factors. How do you make a blend between all of them? Because the aspirations would be different, the way they operate would be different, the style, the timing in which they operate would also be different. So as a unified leader, how do you make an impact? Is that very important? So what I want to talk about right now, I want to talk about NCR. Okay. And when I want to talk about NCR, I think if you would have also, mentioned a lot of points in the chat box, which I'll just take up right now. If you know about the, global B school rankings today in the world, right? You would know about the London Business School, you would know about the Yale Business School, or you would have also known about the different business schools, right? Which like in Harvard. But how many of you are aware that NCR has produced the second most CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies in the world, which is right after the HBS, which is the Harvard Business School. Okay. Now, if I talk about NCR as a brand, I think you are aware about it. But if you are not aware about it, let me give you a clarity. NCR started in Europe. You know about France. The capital is Paris. There's a place known as Fontainebleau, which is very near vicinity of Paris, and that is the place where the campus is located. But other than that, NCR also has a presence today in San Francisco. They have presence in Abu Dhabi. They have presence in Singapore too. Okay. Now, today, if I talk about NCR over here, you see that giving an example about NCR's faculty members pool, which is about, having a diversity, a wide range of diversity from more than 41 countries. And NCR's MBA, if you would just want to take a rating, it is ranked in the top 3 MBAs in the world. And this is because of the NCR's credibility. It takes me back to the same example of the, Fortune 500 CEOs list, which is the second highest coming in from NCR. And that is where, I want to introduce about this program to you. I think a lot of you were in touch with our consultant teams where they were talking about the impact of this program. Why is this program required in today's world? Maybe a couple of you would have done their PGDM or an MBA, or maybe a few of you didn't do that. But maybe today you think that you are at a position in your life. So let me give you clarity. This program, if you talk about, okay, whether this program is meant for me or whether this program is not relevant for me. So I'll give you a clarity so that, we are on the same page. When I talk about this program is fundamentally for 3 kind of an audience. Audience number 1, who is an aspiring entrepreneur or is already running into a business. Okay. And I'll give clarity on all of this. Audience number 2, who are the people who are running at leadership positions. And when I say leadership, it's very subjective. For you, leadership could be leading a team of 10 people, or for somebody else, it could be leading a team of nothing less than 500 people. So for people who are managing teams, again, NCR strategic management program is the right fit for you. The third one, for the people who are aspiring to grow into the roles of leadership, whether it's a mid-management or a senior management. And when I say this, there's a reason to it. So I'll just, skip some slides to come to the evident factor on why this is important for this. This is the participant profile for the program. If, you look at the pie chart over here and you look at the companies, you name about the sectors, and I'll talk about the learner base for the program which we have had. For example, if I talk about the BFSI sector today, we have had learners who had enrolled with us for working in companies like a Bank of America, SBI Funds Limited, Tata AIA, Max Life Insurance, etc. We talk about IT sector. We had learners who had enrolled from companies like Wipro, TCS, Infosys, and when we talk about medical sector, healthcare sector, pharma sector, Medtronics, right? American Oncology Institute, Novartis, Mankind, etc. When we talk about construction, engineering, machinery, etc., there is Skipper, there's Britannia, there is Shell, there is Mahindra First Choice, etc. When we talk about consulting, etc., there is Accenture, there is KPMG, there is Deloitte, there is EY. And when we talk about the profile of these people who have got enrolled with us, the fantastic insight which you can understand from here is that the people who have got enrolled with us, their profile is very diverse. But the commonality, if you would look at over here, is an approx 12 years of a median work experience. The reason is one thing which is skewed towards one side of the profile is that the key leadership positions which is there in the profile. So we have had founders, directors, senior managers, project managers. We have had principal consultants, general managers, assistant general managers, team leads, etc. as a kind of a profile. So maybe if you are in this, room today, if you are still in this conversation and you don't lead any team and you don't even have an aspiration to lead any team, maybe in the near future, another couple of years. So in that case, I would not recommend this program as a right fit for you. Okay. But yes, if you are somebody who is already into leading team, or an aspiring entrepreneur, or already an entrepreneur or running a business, or if you are somebody who's into a mid-management level, want to learn about the extensive parts of management, this is the right platform. Okay. So while I've talked about the program and while I've talked about NCR as an institution, let me give you clarity that in India today, all thanks to Karan Johar, that a lot of us don't even know about NCR as a brand. If I ask about any college pass out today, even in the, in maximum parts of our country, if I talk to them that, okay, what are the best P schools? So the answer would come in as IAMs, right? The Institutes of Management, right? But the answer is that if I talk about the global rankings, and I would not go by any private rankings, we talk about the WS, which is World Education Services, or if I talk about the QS World Rankings, which are the, platforms which one can rely upon. The answer is that you would find IMs and ISPs rankings to be even between 60s and 80s in the top 100 rankings. Okay. That doesn't take away from the part that I am also a patriot. But the point is that India, as a part, if I talk about management, and one would spend any kind of money, time, effort, etc., you would want to put it for the best of the use. And that is what we have seen as an example. And that's where we see that NCR is into the top 3 in the world. And that has been consistent over the last decade. Now, the program, if I talk about the program nomenclature states strategic management and business essentials. What does that mean? I have given a few examples on strategic management, but I would just break it into 2 parts. And I would not now talk about, the modules first. What I'll talk about is the way it's delivered, because it has been too theoretical, I think, since last 1 hour, you guys are sticking with the screen. So what I'll talk about today is the kind of profile, you will be meeting throughout in the program. And the best part about it is that this is all going to be a live conversation. There's a difference between a recorded format, and there's a difference between what you do live. Today, let's say, for example, you are hearing me live, but again, there is a gap in this. The gap is that, I can talk with you, or maybe I can read what you are writing. But the gap is that if you would want to speak with me, that's not possible in this forum. But yes, when I talk about the delivery of this program, there's a way to it. The batches are of very small sizes. You enroll into a program which is of 100 people, 200 people program. But then again, you see that the way you get the span, it's very difficult, right? Comparatively, on this note, when you compare it apple to apple with any other program, you would find that the batch size is somewhere between a 25 people to a 40 people batch range, which is why this program is where you get an interaction with the faculties. And let me tell you something about, one of the great faculty, which is Andrew Shipilov. And why I'm telling you this is because, when you talk about Andrew Shipilov, you can just Google it right now simultaneously. I am there on the screen. And when you Google it right now, or maybe YouTube, you put the name of Andrew SHIP, and the moment you write it, you will get a suggestion which Google or YouTube will give it to you, even without you mentioning it NCR by any means, because he has made such great achievements, because he has been somebody who has talked about areas of blue ocean strategy. He has coined it. NCR in their France campus conducts a 4-day program on blue ocean strategy itself. And people all across the world also apply for this. And, to verify that fact, you just go to the NCR's website and search about the Blue Ocean Strategies program, which in Indian currency cost us somewhere close to 14 lakh rupees. Okay. And again, when I talk about the other, professors, eminent faculties over here, there are also people who are coming in from industrial background. The great example which I can give you is Professor Manuel Sosa, right? If you could see over here, he has been somebody who's also associated with one of the, reputed, I would rather say the rank 1, tech university in the world, which is Massachusetts Institute of Technology, right? MIT. And again, he had hailed from sectors like petrochemical and computer-aided software systems, right? Again, there have been other people too. And there is, Professor Amitabh Chattopadhyay, who is also the area chair for this program. Okay, so such are the faculties who are coming in from the NCR's campus, who will be teaching live in this program. And the delivery of the program is over the weekend, which is Saturday and Sunday. Again, telling you something, another part mandatorily is that while we talk about this program, or maybe the outcomes, or maybe the ROI, and I'll take this another 5 minutes itself while I wind it up very quickly. So what I want to talk about is that the mandate in this program is a bare minimum of a 75% of attendance criteria. Why it is very important? It is important because as a 75% attendance criteria, if you're not able to meet, as a institution, NCR has their own rules and demarcations to eliminate you from the program. So it's not a way that, NCR as an as an organization or as an institute can take, candidates and give out certificates to anybody and everybody. That's not the answer. I have Mr. Atul also with us, who will be helping me and answering the questions which you would have any. Now, key industry experts, if I talk about today, we all know the Press Trust of India, which is PTI. So we have currently the CEO of the PTI, who is also an alumni of IIM Ahmedabad, right? He is Mr. Venki Venkatesh, right? As you can see over here. And we talk about the Liberty Asia House Group. We have the executive director, under the business development segment is Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, and he's also an ex-ISB. Okay, we have Sesh Vasudev Murthy from Walmart and Amazon. He is also, one of the key, I would rather not use the word industry expert over here. The kind of relationship which we have with Shesh is very, very good. The other part is we have, the head of strategic alliances and partnerships from Philips, Netherlands, Amsterdam. He's Satyam Arora. He's also a CFA, right? He operates out of Netherlands itself. So giving such examples on why it's important to have a blend between academia and industry. And, we talk about the budget which was passed, in the parliament. We talk about the union budget of finance. Nirmala Sitharaman quoted it that in India, the greatest challenge which we want to solve it today is education, because the CAGR for people completing their +2 versus the people completing their degree, it's huge, it's immense. It's not even, 40% in today, right? What they want to, bridge this gap. This is where, even when we see that a lot of people are completing their graduation, completing their BTech, but not able to find the right job. Or if they're able to find the right job, not able to get the right salary which they would want to get it. And that's where the gap is. Colleges are teaching something else, and market is asking for something else. To bridge this gap today, you need something, as I mentioned, which is a blend between academy and industry. So for this program, first of all, you get a world-class academy experience. And secondly, you get a world-class industry level of experience, which are from different sectors. You talked about BFSI, I have mentioned you the same. You talked about IT, I mentioned you about the same. You talk about consulting, I mentioned about the same. You talk about retail, you talk about, emerging sectors like renewable energies, EV, etc. All of those are all contained and congregated over here. Now, when I talk about, why there's a hero group picture into the same, or, what is the duration? Obviously, yeah, this is one point which I missed. This is a 6 months duration program. The ROI which you can expect out of this program is what I'll depict from the module over here. And that's the last point which I want to cover. And then I'll take up the questions. See, the program talks about widely 3 things. Number 1, you learn about the basics of management if you haven't heard about it. So which is what you learn about what is, HR, what is admin, what is operations, what is finance, what is branding, what is sales, what is marketing. That's one part of it. The other part, because that is not much stressed about. And that's where I told that there's a minimum eligibility criteria of 5 years of work experience, because this is not like a correlate MBA that talks about only the generals of management. You understand all of that, and then you step into one of the specialized functions and start doing it. No, it's not the answer. The second part is where you are aware about some of these terms, you have chosen a specialization, and you are already into one part of your business or maybe at your work. What you want to learn more about is how do you implement the same, right? That is where you learn about areas like maybe design thinking. How do you bring it into effect? You talk about blue ocean strategy, or you talk about areas where you want to lead teams, which is the third part. Today, let's say, for example, if you are a founder of a company, the most important part is about pitching and networking sessions. Pitching could be about your product, about your idea. And even, appraisal season is around the corner. For a lot of us, we know that maybe the next month or maybe for the next to next month, we have appraisals. But again, what are we doing? We are also pitching what we did in last 1 year, last 6 months as an employee in the company in which we are working today. So that is where pitching comes into picture. And networking comes into picture when people switch jobs, right? When you switch one job to another, the best platform which people, rely upon or bank upon today is neither Naukri nor Monster nor anything like that. It's only LinkedIn. It's what we all know, right? LinkedIn serves as the best platform today. And that's where LinkedIn is ruling in the market. Like, there are competitors, but LinkedIn is ruling it by anything, right? And then we talk about the leading teams and organizations part. The most important part which we want to understand over here is that, when you lead teams, you have to understand that there are areas where you have to focus. Okay, so where there are diverse teams, could be coming in from various age groups, could be coming from various gender groups, could be coming from various backgrounds. You have to understand about all of that. So I think that this is something which you can connect with our team, and they can also talk about all of these things in detail. I will now take up questions, and jointly when I will say that I will take up questions, it is more about understanding on what is Hero doing over here. So giving you an idea on Hero, I think Hero is a well-known brand in our country. We know about the Tata, the Reliance, and the Birla, and Hero is also a brand which was formed at a time when, we just talked about the inception of our country after 1947, right? And what I'll do right now is that I'll share my screen. I think my screen is already shared. What I'll do right now is that I'll just make, everyone watch a short video clip of 3 minutes, right? And I think that maybe in the chat box, if you can confirm that if you are able to, see this, okay? Or maybe like, I think that since we have a deadline, which I just got an update, I think Atul is there with us, okay? Atul, can you confirm?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So I just got an update from the team that there is a limitation on the timing part. Okay. All
Yes,
right.
Ronak.
So what I'll do is that I'll start taking up the questions, and maybe Atul, are you also able to see the questions?
Question.
Q&A part and the chat part.
Yes,
He
yes.
could see the chat as well and the Q&A session as well.
Right. So I think that Atul, what I'll do is that I'll also pass on some of the questions to you. I'm not able to see much of the questions. I think guys, you can start posting the questions if you have any. There has been a question on why LinkedIn is best for job search. I think that I'll be answering this question, but yes, first of all, I want to take up questions which might be with respect to the program if you have any. Anybody, any question?
Ronak, you can also refer to the chat box.
Okay. What I'm seeing, NCR session recordings. If you would want NCR session recordings, yes, the classes are going to be live. It is mandated for people to attend the sessions live because it's a real-time learning which is focused upon. It's not a recorded content format focused upon. I think Atul, while people think about the questions, you maybe can share about it 2 minutes about of your experience. How was the program for you, please? Thank you.
All right. I believe there is no specific question, so it's all about like what kind of experience do I have with the class, right? That would be the main agenda. All right. Uh, as you already gave me the introduction about like what I did and what everything. Okay, let me give you the overview of what is my experience with this specific class. So what happened? Our batch size is not that much. Why? So there is a batch size of almost like 25 to 30, 31 to 32 people, and the average experience is ranging from 5 to 20 years, 20 even 25. So that's the average of experience in the class I was part of. And the third part is how it was divided is it's not about like there is a theory and they teach us. It's all about they give you the so before you come to the class, so to let all the learners know, before you come to the class they give you the pre-reads, so you read those things. Once you read that, so you will be mentally prepared what you are getting into for the next class. That's the first thing. Second thing, when you have like a basic idea what you are getting into the class, after that what happen is they give you the overview about that particular session, and then after that we have like a practical breaking rooms in which it's not like you learn a theory and you go home. Before you go home, we have a like a breakout sessions. In sessions, the teacher, the person who's giving the class, they divide us in certain in smaller groups where we can practically apply those things which we have learned. Then after that, we'll check like okay, the strategy which we applied will be the right one, or are we in the right direction or not. We'll check with the teacher one by one with a group wise. Then after that, you have a two different things. You have an action learning thing, which action learning is what uh, whatever you learn in your last class. Based upon that, there is a practical scenario for you which you need to solve within a group. They'll divide you into certain groups of 4 or 5 people, or maybe less, or maybe more, depends upon what's the that strength. So in action learning, what you need to do, you need to resolve, you need to solve that practical problem, practical real life problem using using the concept which has been taught to you. And on top of that, we have one particular thing called capstone project, which parallelly runs, which is not specifically for one particular class. This is for the whole course. So what happened is, so in this capstone project, you prepare. So there is two different kinds of project. One is action learning. Second one is the capstone. The capstone is for the whole course for whole 6 months. What you need to do is you will pick any problem, or you pick any business, or you'll pick any real life problem. You pick it, and you need to present at the end of the course that this is the problem, this is how we're going to resolve it. But it will be divided in certain sessions. Like every 10 or 15 days, we have a session with our mentor. A mentor is assigned to you. You need to present to the mentor, this is the business problem we are dealing with, this is the financial part, this is the pain point, this is our marketing strategy, this is our logistics strategy, this is our finance strategy, this is the so it will divide in parts. Then mentor will guide you, are you in the right path or not. After that, you work upon it, and after every 15 to 20 days, you connect with your mentor. At the end of the session, you need to present this to there is a board. Board is divided in few parts. When I say board, there is a board member. When I say board member, I mean there is a faculty from NCR, faculty from Vired, and your mentor and a few other industry experts join that particular board. When you join that particular board, what will happen is you present your capstone project with your complete team, and there will be questions and on what is your strategy and everything. And there is and your whole course is this particular capstone has a certain weightage, as already mentioned, somebody mentioned previously. There are markings as well, because it's a global program. It's not like you just join the program and they'll give you the certificate. No, it's not like that. So what happened is, you need to participate in class. There's a marks for participation. You need to participate in action learning projects. There is a marks for that. You need to participate in your capture project. There's a marks for that. And after that, there is some assignments as well. Assignments is for those are individual assignments for every learner, and there is a portal you need to go to. Okay, that I guess that I missed that part. So apart from that, there is a parallel portal which you get every learner get access to, and that portal has pre-read, post-read, your questions, your assignments, your action learning, and after you submit your answers, so everything will be graded and available in the portal. So it's like a single point where you can have everything. You need not to keep a particular file with you. So everything will be online on that particular portal. So that's the just a overview, just an overview of what I've been through. And if you ask me, it's a great experience of learning. And when you see, when you are in a single room with of same industry experts, so you all have a same aligned mind. But when you come to a batch like this, we have a people from pharma to IT to healthcare, civil engineers, CAs. Some people are from the fashion as well. Some people are from apparel industry, and there are some people from oil and gas. And ranging from experience to 5 to 25, 30 years, you will learn a lot when you interact with those people. And let me add one more thing. It's not like that. So we all know it's an online program, but it's not like just you meet in an online class and that's it. Whenever you need to work on an action learning program, so there is a group. You interact with your group. Whenever you need to work on a capstone project, there is a separate group for that as well. You need to interact with your group. Then you have your session with your mentors. Then you have some soft skill programs as well. So why I mentioned soft skill? There are people who are from 5 plus years experience to 25. So it's a program which is designed in such a way that it can take care of the needs of people who have, let's say, 5 years of experience, 5 plus years of experience as well. So there is some soft skill programs as well, which will be running in parallel. So we'll learn everything. We will interact with each other in that particular program as well, which is not that much like a course was related, but that will give you a perspective of how to deal with the certain things, and how to deal with teams and the problems you are facing in your professional life, like that. Those kind of additional things. That is just an overview. If anyone has any specific question regarding this
Okay.
particular program, how it taught, and
Okay.
anything, so I'm like happy to answer.
I mean, thanks a lot, Atul, for the grateful insight which you have given. I think simultaneously, Mahima, you can share the LinkedIn profile of Atul to for everyone's reference if they want to connect with him. Okay, and since we had this webinar scheduled from 6 to 7:30, so we are already short of time. So maybe what we can do is that we can have our team members reach out to you directly, one-on-one, individually, to answer and cater all your doubts. A lot of people had questions with respect to the program fees, the kind of career services which you can expect, or maybe whether you get an on-campus immersion. The answer is yes, you get an on-campus immersion if you would want to go ahead with it. That is something additional if you would want to go ahead with it. It is going to be held for 5 days in France, Fontainebleau, Paris campus of NCR. If you would want, there is a provision of it for also for the same. And with respect to how the assessment happens, whether you're working on Saturday, Sunday, how do you manage it all? What kind of career services, what kind of companies are tied up with, Hero Wired. These are certain things which I think it's the best way to handle it in one-on-one session. Since time is short today, we will be closing the session, but I would really like to thank Atul, thank Mahima from my team, and thanks to each and everybody who has joined this session. It was a wonderful, Saturday evening spent with all of you. Okay. And again, I'm saying that wherever you would want to connect, we have given the LinkedIn IDs of Varun, me, as well as Atul. Also for the teams, you can expect our team to reach out to you to answer all your questions if you have any. Okay. Over to you, Mahima. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronak. Thank you so much, Atul, for sharing your experience for the program of Strategic Management and Business Essential. Thank you so much, Ronak, for sharing your insights on the program. And thank you, everyone, for being a lovely audience tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed this session, and we'll be right back with yet another exciting webinar for everyone. And just to make sure all of your questions have been seen by us, and our team will be reaching out to you as soon as possible, and we'll be connecting with you personally itself. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a lovely audience. Thank you, Atul. Thank you, Ronak. Good night, everyone.